One. Alright, we're recording. Alright, hold on, let me, I don't know how well that's gonna play. Alright. So, today, this is a weird idea I had. A few years ago now, I want to say 2 years, I decided to rewatch my favorite childhood show, Teen Titans, and I reviewed every episode of it. I got them for Christmas, like every episode in the DVD I got for Christmas, and I went and rewatched them. I was like, hey, I'm going to just review every episode. I gave them scores, I gave them individual written things, and what we're reading today is actually the seasonal reviews for it. I was going to do every review, but those are all in, like, different documents, and that comes out to, like, triple this length, and this is already going to be, like, a half-hour thing. This is all pretty much different stuff than what I've said in those reviews, because those were individual episodes, but this is just, here, I'm gonna peek through real quick. Largely, it is, it's largely seasonal reviews, as you can see. However, once we get past Season 5, the final season, I give a whole series review. And that's, like, the largest part of it, and I break it down by, like, main characters, story, different parts of the story, other episodes, the art animation. You can see. Hopefully this isn't completely scuffed. As I was testing it out, I realized this might actually suck. I'm gonna have a guy doing text-to-speech in the background, so it's kind of like a director's commentary, except I'm not a director, and this is a piece of writing. Writer's commentary, I don't know. I always thought it'd be a fun thing if, like, the author for charity, like, reads his own book in, like, a long live stream of, like, 8 hours. It sounds awful, and, like, you know, fun for charity to do. I don't know. So yeah, I'm just gonna get into it. Like I said, might be completely scuffed and bad. I'm gonna largely just kind of let play, sort of. I'm going to try to give as much thoughts as I can. I don't know how much insight I'm going to give into this. I might, in the beginning, give a whole bunch, in the later half, maybe not as much. But yeah, it's going to be pretty much it. Cool. Now, I did forget to set a timer. That's going to be another scuffed part. I'm going to have to stop every 12 minutes, so that'll be cool. Alright. Cool.
Season 1. The first season. The one that started it all. Looking back at it, I'm more impressed with it than I initially gave it credit for. A lot of it comes from the drafty early season production, but it definitely holds up against later seasons. The biggest thing when considering a Teen Titans season tends to be the seasonal arc out of all the seasons in the show. This one had the least amount of focus on it in terms of episodes given to it, but what elevates that is how well done those episodes are. The top 3 episodes are all in this plotline. The most we see outside of these focused episodes are small appearances by Slade. Over the season we see how Robin gets more obsessed and stressed about Slade.
Slade was definitely the most
done,
prominent part of
the other
season
characters
1.
are memorable. Given that it's the first season,
even
there
when
are
he
a lot
wasn't
of firsts.
the
Going through each episode,
focus, he was in an episode,
it's easy to pick out
had
which episodes are aimed at what characters. These character-aimed episodes introduce us to and make us care about this team's individuals. Divide and Conquer
definitely did a
shows
good
what
job of
happens when one
introducing us to the
teammate leaves the team
characters.
and the devastating effects. The Sisters brings up Starfire and Robin's relationship and some background for who she is. Final Exam shows us our first real villains of the show. You can go through each of these episodes and pick up the foundational pieces of the show. It's early into the Teen
definitely
Titans
pick up
career
in other
the show.
seasons, but
It's almost
season
a
1
reflection of the
definitely
characters'
knows how to, like,
relationships
introduce
with
the
each
stuff.
other and the viewer. We're being shown parts of these characters in order to know them better. Another more notable of these landmark firsts is probably the episode Mad Mod or Detention. It's an important episode for the series, since it was the first really good comedy episode.
That's
Which
literally the
would technically be
title,
the
Mad
first of
Mod
these,
or
though its
Detention.
tone doesn't match the
It's
zaniness
not
of
like
Mad Mod
two
or
different
Detention,
episodes.
or future installments of that scale. The style presented in Mad Mode or Detention would be a tradition of
These are
sorts
definitely
carried
the more
into every
creative
season
episodes,
thereafter.
though I will
There are
say, I
broadcast
feel like a
aspects
few
of
of
the
them
show
are hit or
that are
miss.
worth mentioning.
That's me
The
remembering
majority
it,
of people
though.
will see it the same way, through the chronological production of the show. But the way it was presented to the public is a worthwhile discussion.
Oh yeah,
The
that,
third
this is
episode
weird.
was aired first, and the first was aired third, and then Car Trouble was aired a month after the season finale, I'm assuming to pad for time in between seasons. What I assume to be a consequence of not having all the rights. Not a whole lot of other hero-type characters appear in this season, and in fact, there were many villains made up for the sake of the show.
Probably didn't
We
have
get
a
Thunder
whole lot of
and
other
Lightning,
characters
though
because
they
we were
only turn
learning
hero
about
at the
the
end,
main
and at Aladdin
characters.
Deep 6. The other
The
characters are all
broadcast
villains,
stuff.
and for the most part, they're interesting, or at least goofy enough to appreciate. Slade,
The broadcast
of course,
stuff,
is one of
I think
animation's
that's
best
pretty
villains.
normal
He's in
throughout other
control of
stuff.
everything,
I don't think
or at
that's
least
like
he
a
seems to be.
special.
I could probably develop a
Here
whole
I'm,
article around Slade alone.
you know,
They keep him around for 2 seasons, but he has
brown
such an
nosing
influence over
Slade.
Robin that he appears as a vision in season 3, and a demonic servant to Trigon in season 4. The final episode he's in is the final episode of the series. A lot of what there is to say about the first season is about the foundation it creates. It's a microcosm of what the show becomes. It's certainly not the most polished of the bunch, but for what it lacks in quality in the animation and other new show blunders, it makes up for in good plots and ideas.
Now, yep, that's pretty much all my thoughts. I might cut this out. Pretty much all my thoughts on that season. I think I summed it up pretty well. It was definitely enjoyable for the plot. I feel like, out of all of them, that one is the most dependent on, like, stands on its own 2 feet. Other seasons, obviously, probably can watch them and not be confused, but I think that first one, it works out pretty well. Yeah, season 1 was good. Production was, like, lower. Like, first few episodes definitely were, like, not very polished. Voice actors didn't have everything all together, but I think by season 2, as we'll find, it gets a lot better. So, yeah.
Season 2. The second season of any TV show has a lot to do. If there was something people didn't like in the first season, you have to change it. Usually, you also get a higher budget, and you have to adjust how you create the show to fit that budget. You need to keep in everything people liked about the series in the first place.
Season 2
along with all of
is
that,
always
the
a
very
very
fact
important
that you've got a
step in
second
the
season means
series
that it's good enough to
progression.
seek further continuation. In many ways, Teen Titans Season 2 does a great job. This season feels fully realized. The animation mistakes, while not completely gone, are much less
There were a lot of
common. The
mistakes
voices
in
are
season
where they
1, that
will
was
be for the
weird.
rest of the show. We also get an adaptation of Teen Titans' best-known story, and it's told extremely
yeah,
well.
I
It's
forgot
not
it.
without its mistakes. However, every dog has its day being a clear example.
I
but
ragged
most
on
of
this
season is
episode
great.
there.
The biggest thing to
I
talk
hate
about
that
in this
episode,
season
man.
is of course the Judas contract storyline. I was surprised going back over the episodes to see how many of them connected to the story. 5 out of the 13 episodes. Somehow, these don't feel like they give enough focus on Tara as a part of the team, since every episode featuring her makes her the focal character. But that's fixed in Betrayal and Aftershock Part I with clear references to her actions within the team through memories and interactions. This season goes one step beyond by connecting to future
I don't
seasons,
believe in that so much.
specifically
I
season
feel
4.
like she
And the
isn't
last
super
episode of
casually in
season
there,
5.
but maybe
These
that's the
episodes
point.
are great, in that they're able to tell a story with separated parts. The finale is particularly great, drawing many parallels to Robin's journey in the first season. We never know that much about Tara biographically.
I do kind of
making
think
up for that is the fantastic
first season was
characterization.
trying
She
to
acts
do
cool
Judas
about certain
contract in a
things,
way,
but freaks out about
but,
others. You can get the gist of what her
and then,
background is like.
by season
the
2
whole
you
thing
would think
itself
they're
is
not,
fantastic,
but
and I have to
they
complain.
always do.
The rest of the
Teen
season
Titans
is
they
mostly
always
made
do
up
a
of funny
Judas
episodes,
contract
which it
story.
achieves with
It's
varying
kind of
results.
ridiculous.
The other serious episodes of this season are great, especially How Long Is Forever. It shows an interesting look into the future
I
of these
like that one.
characters.
That was a
Other
good
episodes
episode.
like Only Human, Unfear itself are nice additions to the character-based episodes. Transformation was interesting for the direction it went in with underlying themes. Winner Take All was a nice contribution to the array of characters that Teen Titans ends up creating. The funny episodes of this season had a very large range. We have one of the funniest and best of these, Date with Destiny, and the worst episode of the series, Every Dog Had Its Day. What separates these are the key factors of what makes funny episodes good. Of course, good jokes are a key part of them. The best comedy episode of the series doesn't even have much of the second key part, but good jokes compensate for that. What Date with Destiny gets right in Every Dog Had Its Day is an underlying understanding and development
that
of
was a
characters.
mistake
They
there.
make us
Like,
laugh,
Every Dog
not
Has
just
Its Day
because of the
gets
jokes and
wrong.
animation, but because of who they are. Even if you took out the imperative story-based episodes, you would still be left with a great collection of episodes. With them, you get the first fully realized part of Teen Titans
I'll say this.
season. With them,
I don't think that review was as good as the other ones. It seems a little silly. The other ones, I haven't read the other ones, but I feel like I didn't focus on like Tara's stuff as much, although I might have talked over that. I kind of did, but I think I'm mostly talking about in other seasons where it's very impactful with the second season. Now, they don't have, like, clear-cut references, they don't talk about Terra all that much, but you always kind of feel it. And in that way, it's powerful. I think it tells, a different kind of story than the other ones, because it feels like you lose a member of the team, and you never really get that back. But the reason I was surprised there were so many episodes, about that storyline was I remembered, there being barely any. And even off the top of my head, I feel like there's only really like 3 or 4. Well, I mean, when I think about it, it makes sense, but it feels so connected, it's almost like a movie, and in that way it feels shorter because it's like one thing altogether. Like I said, there's like no casual episodes with Terra, which I think is a missed opportunity. If I were doing Teen Titans and I freaking would not adapt Judas' contract again, oh my gosh, that story's been done to death. But if I were to do it again, I would probably have her in a more casual setting more often, to make her really feel like part of the team, make that, like, her sort of death feel more impactful. I don't know.
Season 3. This is nearly the halfway point in the series. By the end of it, you're 3/5 of the way done. For what this season had in the story, it more than made up for some of the better episodes in the series.
I think I
the
focused
story
on
is
the
easiest
ending
thing
because
to
I was
talk about
depressed
this
about
season. Compared
finishing
to every
this
other
whole
one,
project.
it's small potatoes. By the end of reviewing it, I think I figured out what piece it was missing from the puzzle. The other storylines in the other seasons involved every member of the Titans. Everyone feels devastated at Robin's apparent separation from the Titans. The tension in between that and their first encounter with Slade is palpable and part of what makes that story great. The growth for Cyborg in this season is good, but it doesn't feel complete. By the end of the season finale, his growth isn't very clear.
It definitely felt like
he seemed to have his
Cyborg
storyline go the way of him trying to be independent, and then it used some of his
and it
humor
was like
to
the
win in
Titans
the
were
end. He
part
grows,
of that,
and you
not
can tell, but no
all
one
of
else
it.
does. The other Titans are upset that he leaves the group, but it isn't for long that he does. It doesn't feel weighty enough. The story made for interesting situations and premises for the season, but it didn't feel big enough to compete with the previous seasons, and that's really where the problem is. It's because it doesn't stand up to other seasons' plots that it isn't as well received. But luckily, this isn't what the season is about. There are only 4 episodes about this in the series, the least amount in the entire series.
Yeah,
Half
that's a
of them
good
are the
point.
season finale. As such, it doesn't define the season. A lot of what this episode is are the strings of great episodes. The premises alone are great. The best episode of the series is among these. It brings together the last 2 seasons and future ones. Slade has a big impact on the series, and Haunted definitely shows that. It's among the darkest in the series too,
yeah.
but you can appreciate
Haunted
what it
is
does for
an
the
amazing
series.
episode.
Other episodes in this season
thought
are
it would
equally
be, like,
fantastic. Betrothed is probably the best episode on Robin and
That was
Starfire's
great.
romance
That was
in the
like a
series.
whole
It does
movie
so
in
by
an
not
episode.
entirely
That was
focusing on
crazy.
it, but making it an integral part. Robin is further haunted by the reappearance of Red X and X. That episode by itself spawned numerous theories that are still running today. The Beast Within is a great Beast Boy episode that develops the friendship many people are a fan of. As is Spellbound, though, it focuses on a vulnerable Raven. We get our formal introduction to
definitely
Silky and
story
cannot
heavy.
keep him.
Although I
Though
just
he
feel
had
like they
many
could have
small
done a little bit
appearances
more with the
throughout this
story.
season.
I think
The
that was
funny
my
episodes of this season were diverse
qualm.
in rating, usually lower than others. This isn't meant to be a negative reflection on them, just an observation. I think to summarize them all in a sentence, it would be creative. Beast Boy was great in Crash, especially the opening and the conclusion. Revolution was among the better episodes in the season, utilizing a vast array of interesting animation techniques that aren't often used even today. Bunny Raven, or How to Make a Titan Animal Disappear, created a character around a disposable villain in the first and showed off creative ideas even if it wasn't the best in the season. The story episodes of this season didn't have a huge focus on them, and that's okay. If you like them, that's good. I like them. The development of Hive was interesting, if eventually unrealized. Brother Blood isn't a bad villain. In fact, he's so dedicated to being evil it's fun to see. If you're going to compare this villain to the past and future villains, you should compare the other ones too.
funny.
This season isn't defined by the story. It's the grade A stories that are included within it.
I think I summarized a lot of my feelings on that season pretty well. Oh, camera. I think when I think back on season 3, I think, oh, that was a fun season. I think that was they just like use that space to like have fun, kinda. I think it summarized it pretty well. I'm probably gonna cut around this. coming off of season 1 and 2, I'm also kind of thinking in like the producer part of my brain, like, oh, they probably did the story stuff and they realized, oh, kids don't love the story so much, so they like pulled back a little bit, which, you know, they immediately stopped doing. But I think it was alright to do a less heavy story, especially in the last ones people died. I say that, and they still had Haunted and stuff like that. Yeah, when I think back on, really, season 1 is like a little shaky, but like so far, pretty much all wins across the book.
Season 4. Something that I've repeated in many of my episodic reviews for this season was this fact. It was supposed to be the last season.
Yeah,
so when I watched and reviewed these episodes, I had to keep that in mind. I think if it were to be the final season of the show, I would be even more devastated than I already am about the fifth season.
Terrible place
the episode count for each season remained the same. With a little over 20 minutes to an episode, you end up with under 40 episodes. There are shows made back that have longer 2 seasons than that. It was interesting enough to enjoy the hypothetical end. I don't think the 5th season is a fantastic way to end the series, but I do think it's better than this. You shouldn't treat that as a bad thing. The finale itself is fantastic, but the episodes to support that shouldn't be the last of their kind. I think that it makes this season better, because they thought it was going to end soon. And when I say they thought this would be the final season of the show, I think it was more like the creators didn't think a 5th season was something they would get, and they weren't told until later. So it's not that big of a deal.
I don't
Most
know
of the stories in Teen Titans are good ones.
It seems
by
like there's no break
I think
in
people
the
like
years,
the 4th season the most. This is probably because Raven is the most popular member of the Titans, and this season is all about her. Not entirely, but it does take up 5 episodes of the season, 3 of which are the finale, an exception to the other seasons, and it's pretty great. They're so similar and built on the same plot that they make each other better. Birthmark was surprising for how dark it went, the revival of Slade, and Raven's secret. The prophecy is a great lead up to it, feeling almost like a sequel. The end as one collective finale is great. All of the fights are interesting and amazing. I don't think there's a better sequence of the main Titans fighting in any other episode of the show. Raven's story, which is completed here, is grand and changes both the Titans and her life for the better, without disrupting the balance of the show. Altogether, these episodes make the most cohesive story of the show. If you were to watch all of the story episodes for other seasons in a row, there would be some things you would miss out on since there was nothing in between these episodes. But the narrative supported here creates a story contained to the 5 story episodes. Slade, who I mentioned earlier, is strangely great in these episodes. He's never a good guy, but you enjoy seeing him.
You would think
weirdly.
he would like overstay his welcome, but you really didn't feel that.
About Robin and Raven's relationship. These episodes give a strange sort of focus on their relationship in these episodes. Strange because it was previously not a major focus of the series. I would have replaced some of these interactions with different characters to give Raven a wider range of her friends to pull from. Instead,
they had like a brother-sister relationship, and I just feel like it kind of came a little out of nowhere.
There are other episodes in this season, of course, with only a few missteps in the mix. They're largely fantastic. Notably among them, Employee of the Month, Troc the Quest, and episode 257 to 494. I don't touch that dial. Employee of the Month is so off the wall and out of the box creative that it would almost be difficult to mess it up. But they somehow did it perfectly. Troc is an episode that can stand up to some adult shows with how it conveys a poignant message about racism for children's viewing. Episode 257 to 494. I don't touch that dial served as the opening episode to the season and pulled out some great stops for the kinds of stories they were able to tell with what was thought to be a one-off character. The Quest is a fantastic Robin solo episode with a surprisingly nice lesson and enjoyable side plot. On that note of the funny episodes, I have to mention Mother May I, and to a lesser extent Stranded. Mother May I is nowhere near the quality of the other funny episodes, and it has somehow ended up as the episode before the 3-part season finale. It's not a very bad episode, but it's the worst in the season, and bad compared to what it came after and preceded. Stranded ended up being a funny episode by some stretch of the definition. It almost feels watered down what the meaning was supposed to be. What I, and presumably most of the audience, wanted was an episode about Robin and Starfire's relationship.
Remembered it a lot more,
but it's not the majority of the episode. Its space is taken up by some funny bits, but they're not as good when it's interrupting something we care more about. Along with what I would call a half disappointment, we also have Cyborg the Barbarian. This one misses a lot of opportunities with its idea and ends up focusing on a plot that ultimately doesn't matter much at all.
I think back on that was a crazy episode. He went back in time,
a new side to Cyborg's arc in season 3, and it's just a great follow-up to it in general. I'm surprised by how many episodes of this season are marked by disappointment, comprising about 3 of the 13 episodes. But it does show something about the series. If you can disappoint people, that means you've done something to make them proud of before. These mishaps don't ruin this season at all.
Hold on a second. What? Season 4 is definitely really good. Like I said, there were a few like weird disappointments, but also like the highest highs in the entire show. I definitely think ending not good for the show. If it were like the final season, but I think for being season 4 finale, great. Yeah, I have fond memories of this, like, being, oh my gosh, it's like the big culminative thing. The next season's really interesting, and I'm interested to see what my thoughts are, because I remember it being kind of weird, but, yeah, overall, though. Alright, I'm going to apologize for the audio now. It's a different voice, I don't know how loud it is going to be, so I might switch which audio thing I'm using. That just depends on what I discover during editing. Sorry about that in advance. Right.
Season 5. The final season of a show can mean a lot of things depending on what type it was. Heavily story-based shows can burn down in a fiery display of badly developed plots that didn't live up to decade-long hype. Other shows end really abruptly, losing all potential because it wasn't getting enough traction. Teen Titans almost falls into this other category, the shows that could have ended at any season because of its status as a Saturday morning cartoon. If you love the series, that might seem insane to you, but that's the reality of TV programming for executives. The story and place where Teen Titans explored could have delved deeper. And that was probably at the heart of my initial disappointment with the season. I still go back and forth on whether or not it was the best season of the show, as other critics have claimed. There isn't really a best for me. The show is mostly consistent throughout its entire run, and I consider it on some level to be one long show rather than one cut into seasons. The story really cuts into this season.
Well, it's how
It's good for what it's trying to
it
do.
is one long show.
It nearly feels like an excuse to do stories about new superheroes and have the Titans interact with them. At least 8 episodes are directly about the Brotherhood of Evil. The ones that don't contribute to the ideas of the season and feel like a part of it anyways. The 2 episodes that definitely aren't about that, the origin episode, Go! And Things Change, are fantastic episodes in their own right. They're also chronologically opposite of each other in the spectrum of episodes in the series. The season's story and goal isn't clear from the outset. A lot of it is heavily implied, and you can guess what's happening very easily. The core villains of this season aren't the focal villains. They pop up in an episode or 2 and serve as the leaders of the Brotherhood of Evil by the end, but they're not what the team is fighting. The Brotherhood of Evil is formed on an old idea of evil. The cackling villains that call themselves evil, despite how illogical that is. They want to stop the new generation of heroes from taking them down before their abilities are fully formed. Again, their actions are more than the words. The way their plot makes its way through the whole season with the early implications of the communicators being detrimental to the operation was genius. The 2-part episode that opens the series, the only time that's happened, isn't perfect but good enough for what it does. Homecoming Part 1 and Homecoming Part 2 go into a character's backstory a little bit, similar to Starfire's episode, Betrothed. We see a version of the Teen Titans that views their job as one does a position in the military. It isn't perfect, but it sets up formidable villains capable of forming the large group of villains at the end of the season.
It really felt like they were just trying to set up more stuff.
That group of villains is a big deal for the series. Enough to say that the
into
entire season built up to that fight scene in Titans together. Along with calling all Titans, we have something capable of closing out the series while still leaving some hope on the table for continuation. All of the Titans are at a point where they can lead others and form together as one large group of heroes. These episodes are great and a high point for the series. It was these episodes that had me take back many of my opinions of the season. If you were to group the episodes of the season, one of the categories would be ones that directly introduce the Titans to new heroes. These episodes would be Cole, Snowblind, Hide and Seek, and Trust. A lot of these episodes focused on 1 or 2 specific Titans and their own contributions to the larger story. Lightspeed and For Real are almost a part of that. Cole, I wasn't my favorite episode, though the characters introduced had an interesting dynamic and power set. The best part of that episode was Dr. Light's incompetency and accidental success. Snowblind is a great story that connects Starfire to a human similar to her. It makes stories extremely common in the atomic era of America and a modern story that can stand up to them. Hide and Seek is a fantastic episode about Raven that shows us another side to her after we thought we discovered everything after the 4th season. For Real is the Titans West episode that you could almost see more of. The team feels fully established and sets a way of thinking for the rest of this season. Lightspeed is one of my favorite episodes for how it brings out a character new to the show and a classic villain together to make one of the best fan favorites in the series. There are some series lasts as you would expect of the final season. A lot of this season doesn't have the core team as the focus like the rest of the series. But we get Jerome and Joe. is a fantastic origin story for the Titans that brings a lot of new depth for the coming episodes and the rest of the show as a whole. Revved Up, while not the best funny episodes of the show, serves as its last. What it makes up for in comedy it does in the unsolved mysteries it creates and reawakens. Things Change is one of the best known episodes of the show that I found to be a reflection on the show itself, and a quaint close to the series. The show doesn't directly end here, with the movie being the official end. The comics additionally continue the story through some ways they weren't able to before. Along those lines, there's something important to address. This season was originally supposed to have 20 episodes in it, of which we know little about. There's some guesses you can make, and if you search really hard, you can find some mentions of what the plots may have been. But that's it. It shouldn't have been the end of the series in my opinion. But it does a really good job of it. The ending always gets me kind of depressed for how melancholy and bittersweet it feels to know it may never return in this form again.
I was so depressed, it was
but this shouldn't be depressing that it's over. You should be glad it happened, and that you had something to be happy about in order to feel sad about it. Things changed, but that shouldn't always be a bad thing.
Yeah, finishing season 5 was one of the, like, biggest, depressions is a bit harsh. But I just got so depressed at the end of that, final thing. Because, you know, I put all this time into it, additionally, first time rewatching it since I was a little kid, it was just such an impactful show for me that it mattered a whole lot. Like, seeing it end again, reminded me of, oh, shit, and then I think I've kinda, I go over this later, but I think I've gotten over that, like, oh, it should keep going, oh, I don't want it to end, but realistically, I don't think it's gonna keep going. I don't think it should, really. They're not gonna come up with anything that's gonna fully satisfy me. I think the comics probably do something, but other than that, there's not much else you can do. But yeah, season 5, I think it was good. There were just times where, like, if you're going for, oh, Teen Titans, like the team, all those guys, maybe it's not as strong in some ways, but, I think story-wise, probably, it's a lot of fun, a lot of cool stuff that they're playing with, kind of going into them more as individuals and their relationships with other people. I'm saying a lot of stuff, just pulling it out of my hat. I don't remember all of it that well, so, yeah. Alright, now we're gonna do the, final series review. I go over a few different things here, like, main, characters, story, stuff like that. I was able to get the original text-to-speech back, so yeah, here we go.
Something to note before I really start is this: along with any show or series, you really have to watch the show to know what there is to like. I'll do my best here to create a review that can encapsulate many of my feelings about the show, but I don't think it'll be the best example. If you've read all of the reviews, you'll know what there is to like and dislike. There will be some spoilers. I will try to avoid some of them with an optional button, but as of now there are many spoilers for the show in this review. Yeah, I thought this was going to be like this boils down to my opinion. Maybe you love Every Dog Had Its Day, Unpaid Haunt.
I don't know, I thought it was going to be famous or something, and people are going to, actually watch it.
Reviews I've done for this show. I will say out that Teen Titans is my favorite show. This is not born purely out of merit. There are countless other shows similar to this that are much better. It's not even bad or mediocre, however. It's a show that did its job well. I think the reason it's my favorite show is the impact it had on me. It was the first real show that I loved. When I rewatched it for the first time back in 2019, I was astounded. I was so happy to see all of these characters again, and have my sights restored on this show. Somehow, it felt better than last time. As I've implied, it's not perfect either. Main characters. What makes this show for many people are its characters. Some drafts of the show had more members of the core Teen Titans, like Wonder Girl and Kid Flash. However, the rights to these characters were either secured to some other production company, or didn't work into the final show. All of the characters were designed to feel iconic. They would touch on the past and what these characters have gone through, but their identities were never something they talked about, except mentioning Beast Boy's name in the final season. They feel like they're superheroes all the time. These characters are iconic Teen Titans members. Most of them have their identities stored in these roles. The original comics gave Dick Grayson, this show's Robin, the biggest chance to grow in his history. Robin is the best-known character, usually serving under Batman. Batman is rarely talked about or seen in this show. This allows Robin to grow away from his identity.
I did like that, I think.
It was among the first, if not the most infamous of sidekicks in comics. Especially in more recent years, Robin has gained better individuality through his Nightwing moniker. In the show, Robin is the leader of the Titans. He's probably one of the coolest characters in the show. Part of his strength comes from his determination to keep up with his superpowered allies. He ends up as one of the most formidable forces in the show. His arc is impressive for its portrayal of his development. He's analytical and focused on the mission. A lot of his growth comes from how he differs from Batman. He learned from Batman how to be Batman, but with the Titans he learns to be
Batman's
himself.
not in the show, but you really feel his kind of impact on Robin.
But what's great about the show is that
It's
he
really
really
cool
isn't.
they're able to do
Every
that.
character gets fair treatment, except maybe Starfire and her supposed sixth season focus. Starfire is the clear opposite of Batman
really
or Robin.
gave her
She's an
the
extremely kind
short
person
end of the
who
stick
always
there.
tries to be understanding of others. Her backstory, touched on in several episodes, is a tragic one. In Go. The closest she is to that backstory, she's barbaric, and completely off the mark for what she usually is. A lot of her life has been in slavery and war, but on Earth the threats are less imminent. She has a new culture to understand and adapt to. Her rudimentary understanding of English gives her this way of speaking that is at once normal, but equally alien. In terms of her powers, she's one of the more powerful. I have heard her compared to a different version of Superman,
Great
and that makes a
there.
lot of sense. Her levels of strength and abilities contrast and match her usually soft personality. The romance between Robin and Starfire always gets an episode of focus in each season except the fifth, made up for in spades with Teen Titans, Trouble in Tokyo. A lot of people debate whether Dick Grayson should be with Starfire or Barbara
I
Gordon.
gave a whole
For me,
paragraph
it's
to this
Starfire.
bit. It
A lot
was
of
a
that
big
is
part of the
because
show,
it's the only
but
pairing I've actually seen evidence of since I don't have access to a lot of comics, but a big reason is how it's developed in the series. Starfire opens Robin up. She's far from Batman in the ways that made up Robin's methods of being a superhero. Cyborg is a great character in the
stand
series.
by that.
He's the oldest member of the group, in the comics especially so. Often he rides the line on where he ends up team-wise. He's either in the Justice League or the Teen
pretty much
Titans.
always
in
in
the show.
Justice
He's
League
charismatic
now.
and emotionally radical.
Almost
He's rarely
never in
kind
Teen
of something.
Titans. It's kind of
He's all
weird.
in whatever it is. I like to think of him as everyone's best friend. He has an endearing relationship with everyone on the team. His powers feel basic, in a way, but he's also the most
Cyborg,
memorable and notable part robot character.
he's
in
literally
comics.
like just
His
really good
background
friends
is an
with
athlete.
everyone.
People who
You
utilize
think,
their
oh,
bodies
maybe
as
not
a part of
like,
their identity makes his story
Raven
feel
or
tangibly tragic in his episodes of focus.
Rom or
He's also
something,
a
but he
genuinely
ends up
smart
being
guy,
like the best.
performing most of the technological problems that
I really
team
like
faces.
Cyborg.
Raven is a fan-favorite character, especially in this series.
Yeah.
Her powers aren't fit with a limit of any kind. She's
know, for
relatable to
certain
the types of
reasons.
people who love TV shows more than others. She's sarcastic, quiet, and powerful. Her memorable Chandos Mathmatron Zintos is iconic. The Fake,
Great
the fourth season,
pronunciation
which was
from
planned
the
on being the last season of the show, has
technology
its
there.
focus on her. She feels like she can't get close to anyone for sake of her emotions getting out of control and unleashing her powers. She fears herself, and thus closes off others for their sake. She's a great character in the show. Beast Boy would be labeled
Yeah.
the comic relief if it were to be anyone, but he's more than that. There are tons of examples of Beast Boy's personality sprouting from insecurity and inconfidence. He has the same amount of partial focus in Season 2 and Season 5. His connection to Tara is believable and palpable, even if her involvement in most of the series
I
is
feel like
either
Beast
being
Boy
deadly or
always gets
non-partisan
labeled as like
later. She
comedic
swirls in
guy,
memory of
but
many shippers.
he ends
Beast
up
Boy's
having like
powers
a
are
lot
pretty
of
fun, and the most
more
drastic
serious
show of power out
moments,
of all the
even
Titans.
compared to like
His background in
some of the
Homecoming
other
Part
more
shows him
serious
as an
characters.
extremely insecure boy whose father figured demands strict following of orders. From the outset he's grown out of being a soldier to his previous family to a loose lazy kid. Underneath all of the grins and jokes, you can see his frustrations and need for respect.
Yeah.
Tara, while only being used
Lot more
as a
depth in that
character in
guy.
Season 2, mentioned in Season 4, and mysteriously used in the finale as an impactful character. She's part of the Titans' legacy. In a bittersweet way, all of the episodes that feature her focus on her, they were more a part of her story, and she was at theirs in the end. The best part of Tara was how well she fit in with the rest of the team. You could definitely see her in the rest of the show. You
I really
always
do-
feel
she
her
could have been
presence
the
in
rest of the show.
A quick note about
Yeah.
Silky. I'm honestly disappointed with the
Yeah.
underrepresentation he
This is
actually gets in the
ridiculous.
series. It's one of the
Silky
things
is
that Teen
barely
Titans
in the
Go
show.
gets better than
I
Teen
think
Titans.
Tara
He turns into a background character, and
might
half of his
be in the
appearances
show
are before
more.
he makes his official introduction.
It's
Slade,
ridiculous.
the biggest villain of the show, is one of the bigger villains in TV history. He's intimidating and powerful. He controls
say that,
and
I'm
sees
not sure.
everything. Whenever he
TV
doesn't,
history?
it feels like a fluke.
Animated
In the
history,
first season,
maybe.
he becomes the new force of evil Robin has to defeat.
No, he's not.
His initial motivation for fighting crime was to
On
avenge
low
his
level
family,
there.
and hasn't had something like that since Slade. In his fights with Slade, he learns to see past many of the projections and fear he had of Slade. In Season 2, he
He's a
corrupts a
pro
vulnerable
now,
hero to his side. A lot of what Slade is originates from something abusive. He often hits or hurts any of the people he takes on no matter what they can do. His reappearance in Season 4 makes way for an even more threatening villain in Trigon. Trigon is a good
Oh, it
villain,
doesn't
but
do
not
the
in the way that
parentheses?
Slade is. He's not a deeply complex character. His conquering of worlds is so common and easy to him that he barely takes any of the Titans seriously, and is only narrowly defeated by a small flaw in his plan. He destroys the planet in a matter of minutes. He would have won, if it weren't for Raven's wish.
I think Trigon was more what he
Brother Blood is a
represented
standout
than
villain
what
for
he
the
was.
series. He's the first big villain that isn't slayed, and he's much more overt in his evilness. He enjoys the theatrics of the whole thing, and dedicates himself to defeating the one person who could resist him. He makes for the most
He was just
chill
like a
season in the
fun
series. The lesson he instills
villain,
is more
really,
from what he
like-
represents than what he does. The Brotherhood of Evil is a group I still have some mixed feelings on. The real threat is the brains behind the operation. The brain. It's what they want that the Titans fight against. They represent an old idea of evil, and how they fight the new good. What their threat becomes ends up being the best sequences of fights in the entire series. In the season 5 finale,
Weirdly,
Titans Together
stay in
story.
sentence, but
The
yeah, it's
story
my
of Teen
feelings there.
Titans is seasonally based. There are threads that pass into other seasons, such as Slade, Robin, and Starfire's romance, and Red X, but for the most part each story is seasonally contained. The first story, upon inspection, resembles a lot of what Judas contracts. It's a Titan being used to betray the others. It has enough elements in
Yeah,
its
I
story to be
mentioned
its
this,
own
but-
story, which is great in its own right. I believe that the creators liked the idea of doing Judas' contract first, but with it would come many problems. The show never had the highest budget, and it was possible that the threat of cancellation was looming over the writers' heads as they plotted out the story.
It sound like we
Will Palmer
barely
focused
ever
on Robin, the
got
best-known
close.
character, and one right for focus. The story goes into how he believes in justice and his problems with obsession. A lot of the
Yeah, I think
episodes
it's just-
don't
it would be
focus heavily
difficult
on
to
Slade
introduce a
himself, but
new-
rather what he does to others
like a
through outside
character who's
interaction.
going to
With Titans,
leave the
with it
team
being the first
when you haven't
season,
established
some
the
aspects
team
weren't
at all.
perfect. Slade's butter
It'd be
when
very
Raven
difficult to
disappears
do
completely
otherwise,
from the
but-
series after the first
Yeah.
episode, save for some references. The first season as a whole introduces us to these characters. Each episode brings in some new dynamic between the characters. By the end, it brings them together by tearing them away to strengthen their bonds. The second season is beloved by many for its take on the Judas contract. A lot of my gripes with it, particularly the casual use of Tara, was something resolved in the last minute with the fantastic finales. Tara's journey is relatably tragic. She's confused and scared of things that have haunted her past. She betrays her
It
friends
is
because it
crazy.
seemed
They
like the
never
best
really
option.
go into her
Slade could
past
have
and
done
it
a
feels
lot of
so
people,
important.
but by connecting him along
They
with what
do
he
in
did
the
to the group
comics
in
a
the
little
past
bit,
makes her
but it
feel like
almost
even
doesn't
more of a
matter
teammate.
what it is.
Her sacrifice in
I
the
think
end is
that's,
something few people
impressive
who watch
that
the
they
show
would
will
pull off.
forget. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The third season story isn't the best. Technically,
Yeah.
it's the worst, but that's more of a numbers thing than one of how much it deserves. I don't think I would have liked another hard-boiled season. We had a Titan basically die in the last season, and the next had a large overreaching arc. It does make up for the thematically easier plot with individually great episodes, like Haunted and the Beast Within, that take some of that
Yeah.
darker tone the series can get into. Cyborg's story is mostly made up of different parts of a whole discussion. I think they resolve too much in Deception to make it more effective, and parts of his growth could have been emphasized in an additional episode.
Yeah,
What brings in our
my thought was,
larger
like,
plot devices.
they've got all these
Titans
other
is a fun
episodes
new
about
area for the show
Cyborg
to
that are
go in with new hero
disconnected, and
characters.
they
Its ending is
continue
inspiring.
despite the
Brother Blood
season.
wants what he can't have in Cyborg's
that, like,
mind,
focus
control
on
or
him
resistance.
and
But
his
what makes
confidence being
Cyborg special
robot.
is his spirit rather than his robotic parts. It felt like by the end that Cyborg and Brother Blood wanted things that were slightly different from each other. Cyborg wants to feel more fulfilled in himself, and Brother Blood wants whatever that might be. The episodes
he wants
don't make the
fulfillment,
answer
but
something we could have predicted.
through world
Season 4 is
conquering,
great for a lot of reasons. Some of the plot points
not
aren't
about
clear to
that.
every character at the same time. Not even the audience knows what's happening at times. Raven's story connects her back to her friends in a new way. She's faced with the problems her father left her with and is still creating. But she has defense in her friends. Her connection to Robin came a little out of left field. Their interactions felt more romantic than friendly. I think some of that interaction could have spread out to all of her friends rather than just Robin. The end
I
would
think
have been
had
a
they
decent send-off
made,
for the series, as it was planned
that
to be.
dynamic more-
It did put a damper on some episodes like Mother May I.
because of
That
the
would have been
tension,
the last of their
if
kind.
they were, like,
The
close
fifth season
relationship
always makes
feels
me
more
depressed.
romantic.
In my rewatch, I made
Um,
myself disappointed with the story it was telling. I wanted to
Yeah.
see more of the Titans
that
in
was
their
sort of
final
the
hours,
big-
and we did, but that's not the intent. Had the series continued, I think a lot of what made Season 5 special would have carried on. The main villains disappoint me in some ways. Madame Rouge is thankfully pushed all the way to the back by the end.
Yeah, I
Major
mean,
Mel and the
she
Brain
was
are
not
awesome
very
duo
fun.
to lead the team, but aren't given a lot of personality. That's a big point with this team though. They're
Yeah.
old-fashioned, they represent a villainy that's long past. More villains are complex, and not entirely evil for the sake of being
I
evil,
think-
as
I
the
really think
Brotherhood
that's
of
where
Evil
it
make
went,
themselves
where
out to be. A lot
it's
of
like
this season's
old evil
story
is
comes
gone
from
and
the
they're
honorary
gonna have,
friends
like,
and
more
friends made along the way for an
complicated,
epic
like,
showdown. The season's opening provides a
anti-heroes.
strange
I
gateway into the
imagine, like,
season by using
Rose,
characters that
Slade's
don't show
daughter.
up again ever. It does create a backstory for Beast
I don't
Boy.
really know.
The overall story of Teen Titans is really well done. You don't really think they've grown or progressed enough to be different from how they used to be in the first season, but they are. Go is important for that reason. We're reminded of what they all used to be like. We always got a bit of information for each hero's past, and seeing them all mushed together is fantastic. They were a young team in Divide and Conquer, and by the end they've become a stronger team of friends. The stories continue in the comics Teen Titans Go. I've yet to read all of them, but I've glanced at some panels and read up on what happens, and it's good stuff. The other episodes...
It does seem like
it's
they
a bit
continue
reductive
that
to boil
energy.
the rest of the series down into some groups, but that's what I'll do to make things shorter. The funny episodes of the show are the best-known examples of Teen Titans meshing with Japan's style of cartoons.
People tend to focus on this when they talk about
when
they blend
They're even
these
marked by the
elements,
use of their Japanese version of the theme song.
It really
These
wasn't that
episodes
much
range
of the
from
show.
bad to the best in the show. Some are marked wrong even in later seasons, though that's
it's
disputable
weird.
depending on who you ask. These episodes do
They
aim
have
for
like
the
a
younger
different intro
demographics,
for
but they're
them,
not demeaningly silly. Like with a lot of comedy
that
in the show,
indicates the
it's
funny
usually really good.
episodes,
The
so
dramatic animation style
it's
that
confusing
takes on
sometimes.
defines the series as a whole. These episodes take up around 1/5 of the series, but the comedy in them is in almost every episode. Character-based episodes are the next level of what the show is made up of. These episodes are basically the normal episodes, aside from the story and comedic episodes of the show. These episodes focus on either a singular character, or one or more characters' relationships. These are some of the episodes with higher ranges than others. They can be funny or serious with various levels of each without going into those other episode types. This difference between seriousness and silliness are a large part of these episodes. Beast Boy is the main character in both The Beast Within a Somber Tale, that shows a dark side to his character, that he uses for good, and Every Dog Has Its Day, the worst episode in the series in which Beast Boy is mistaken for an alien's dog, and played with for a chunk of the episode. Some of these episodes
just
contribute to
wasn't anything
overarching
fun
themes
about
or
episode,
recurring issues for characters, most memorably Cyborg. It's hard to talk about these
Yeah, he had
episodes
very
as a
powerful
whole since
stories,
they're
some
all
of
different
those.
enough to deserve their own reviews, as I've clearly done already. Even in
I
the
do
season-based
have
reviews, I came
a
across some
playlist
problems with how I
of
summarized some of
similar
them.
episodes
It's best
with
to
each
review
other
those through each
that I liked.
individual if you want the full picture. The art animation.
I might go over that
I've
one
mentioned
later,
before, but this series takes inspiration from Japanese anime and manga, most clearly demonstrated through exaggerated reactions and the animations that go along with them. This sets it apart
I
from
do
a lot
think-
of other
I think
superhero
in that
TV,
way,
taking
Teen Titans was
inspiration
kinda
from
like
American
the
animation,
first of that,
since that's what
where,
it is. There are a few shows to clear this in-between area of American and Japanese entertainment.
A
It
lot
goes
of
into
newer
childish and
shows are
serious realms in
taking
its episodes, like
inspiration
some
from
Japanese
other
stuff
types
does.
of
With all of
animation,
that said, it isn't the
largely
best looking
Japan.
show in existence. It has its
And
moments,
at that
for
time,
sure,
it was
but
like
for
Avatar
some
Last
reason,
Airbender,
the
and
animation
then,
doesn't look like someone's animated it.
it's really
It most
only
resembles
gone
cheap
up with
comics
that.
bought from Dollar Generals that were given a few frames. In the Lost episode we get a big taste of what the animation looks like at its absolute peak. It's not ugly or awful either. The show does look good. A lot of its visual problems come from its low budget. You can see the worst of it in Divide and Conquer, the first produced episode, and some of the disappointments in the later season in Go, specifically the last minute.
Definitely-
Perhaps some of these impersonal
Some
feelings
of them
towards
were
the
kinda
visuals come
weird.
from the iconic feeling the writers
Uh.
wanted with these characters and story. I do like the art style. A lot of the designs to come out of the show are marvelous, but they come off as lackluster in certain scenes of animation.
I think it
Teen
had a
Titans,
level of,
Trouble in Tokyo. I'll keep
cheapness
my
that I think
statements
the
on this movie
studio was
brief.
kinda...
I've already written a review on that about
Wishes
half
on-
as long as this one you're reading here. If you want to read that
Yeah.
instead, as it fits into the rest of the series, it's a
had a
great cap
long
off to
review
the series,
for
or at least
the
the last
movie.
thematic loop left to jump through. Robin and Starfire's relationship was never fully resolved until this movie. The problem with it is that
The movie
most
was
of the
good.
focus goes to that storyline.
I thought it'd be...
The other
it's like
characters have
same
funny
level as
moments,
the show,
and they're
just
really
one
fun,
story.
but I wish I could see them more
It's
in
not
their final
particularly
appearance.
serious
The movie looks
or
great,
heavy,
and it feels
but
great. I'm surprised
think
some
it's a
people
good
think the
way to
movie is expressly
end it.
bad. Granted, it is a movie just over
But-
an hour made for TV, but it matches the show perfectly. The change in
Yeah,
scenery
I
is
do
cliche,
think they
but
missed
smart
some
given the
stuff
visual
with, like,
nature
the
of the show.
characters that
Of
aren't
course,
Robin
the
and
whole movie leads
Starfire.
up to the kiss, the
Even
official
then,
start of their
Starfire-
relationship. It's a great way to finish the show, for what it's trying to do. The villain isn't great, Rushagan is fantastic, but the villain is predictable and easy
Yeah,
to defeat in
they
the
just
end.
do, like,
Closing
twisted
statements
villain.
problems with the
It's not
show.
cool.
I would thank someone
Doesn't
here if
even
there
make
was
sense.
anyone to thank at all. If my mom suggested getting this show from the library, or the Justice League Animated Series DVD, that I saw the original ad for the show
I
from,
watched this
I would
all
thank her.
originally from the library. Oh crap! You gotta be kidding me. Sorry. All right, it's cut out on me. So I'm just gonna read the rest of it. And I'll give my thoughts at the end. It's hard for me to admit anything was wrong with the show. Sometimes the rose-colored glasses wear off when you try and take them off. What? Oh, ridiculous sentence. I should have changed that. What the heck? Not a ton is wrong with the show in the way that ruins every episode. A lot of the problems is with its abrupt ending in specific episodes. You can't point to an episode of a show and say it's ruined if most of them are written by one person and editor. What? There are missteps in the communications and some parts of the story is told. What the hell? there are missteps and miscommunications in how some parts of the story is told. The episode orders are sometimes out of tune, especially some of the story episodes. All of them were aired on the same night, so they could have connected better. Production, especially in the beginning, is rough around the edges. There's a flagrant mistakes up until the last episode. There was just like small stuff that I imagine, what the heck, your season 5 and your production hasn't changed all that much. Pretty much what I'm saying there is like, the show's not bad because a few episodes were bad, and you shouldn't judge it based on that. I don't know why I'm mentioning that in this, because I don't think it really applies. No, I don't need to wear these headphones anymore. And I can't hear myself talk, so it sounds weird. I had something else here. The episode orders. I feel like the order that they played the episodes in the official thing, I think sometimes they could have ordered them a little bit better. I know it doesn't matter that much, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense. The biggest problem with the whole show is the ending. The final episode is awesome, the second best in the series, but the wasted potential makes my heart bitter. I don't hate Teen Titans Go. If you hate Teen Titans Go, you shouldn't. It's intended for children and isn't aimed at you. The chances of a revival went way down after Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans Movie didn't do well. If things wrapped better, it would have been that much better. I doubt that revival will even do it justice. That isn't the only cancellation problem I have with the film. The 4th season and 5th season ending mix-ups are annoying in the long run. Teen Titans Go, I haven't mentioned it a whole lot. I didn't used to watch that show week to week, but I think it's a bit of a monster, but at the same time, it's not meant for me, and I think it's evolved to something that's like not completely awful and shouldn't be judged the way it has been. I don't know. I think that about does it for this review. This review only accounts for a small part of the reviews I've done, and those are even a smaller part of the show itself. I thoroughly enjoyed what was originally just a way for me to find the episodes I would most like to watch. I love this show. It will always have its place in my heart, and I hope that I've helped make it better for someone out there. My hope there in the end was like, I'm going to make a website, and I did make a website, which I'm going to link below. But I made a website where people could read my reviews of everything. I did not expect it to really go off, but I had nowhere else to put it. Now, I could have... Teen Titans does have a subreddit, and I guess I could post it there, but I don't know who's gonna... Honestly, that subreddit is awful. Not awful in terrible people, but just a 5-year-old will post his fan art of the show, which he made in MS Paint in 5 minutes, and thinks it's the best thing he's ever drawn in his whole life. I do have a bunch of other reviews. You can read that on the website below. If someone somehow wants me to go through, read and give more thoughts on those, maybe.